What up, guys? Today on the podcast, I have my buddy who is an ER trauma nurse, and he has some of the craziest stories ever. Towards the end of this podcast, he shares one of the most intense stories that I've heard in a long time. But I wanted to have this dude on because he's just crushing it. Like, I see him in the gym, he's like squatting 400 pounds, and he's just jacked, and he just lives an extremely healthy life, and he's also a really busy guy. So, like, I wanted to see how he balances school, work, staying in shape, all of that. So let's get into the episode. This one is a really fascinating one. I think you'll like it. And some of the stories shared here are intense. So yeah, definitely thank him in the YouTube comments below for sharing these stories, because I mean, some of them aren't really easy to talk about, stuff like that. So yeah, today's episode is with Carlos, the ER trauma nurse and all around savage. Let's get into the episode. How I met this guy is he literally came up to me at the gym. And he said, yo, I've seen your content. I've seen your stuff. I'm drinking salt-based electrolytes right now. I fuck with all your videos, everything you talk about. And so I wanted to have him on for a couple reasons. One, he's just extremely dialed in the weight room. This dude is jacked. He moves a tremendous amount of weight. And he was just talking to me about some of the stuff that he does with his health and wellness, which really vibes with what I do. And he works in the ER. Like, his job is very demanding. Very mentally demanding, which I want to get into.
Right, yeah.
He has some crazy stories. So, guys, this is Carlos. Give him a little intro of yourself.
Hey, guys. Thanks for the introduction, Brendan. Thanks for having me. My name is Carlos. I'm 28 years old. I'm Mexican and Irish. I grew up here in the Bay Area, and I've been working out for close to 10 years, and I've been a registered nurse in the emergency department for 4 years now, 5 years total as a nurse. And yeah, I came up to Brendan and I saw him at the gym because I saw him on TikTok and recognized his content, and I think he's a badass. So super privileged, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about just to start things off is the weight room in general. So this is definitely something I've gotten more familiar with lately. When I was in high school, I started working out. I was lucky enough to, I played sports in high school. I ran track. I played soccer. I know you played soccer as well.
That's right.
And, they'd bring us into the weight room and have us lift weights. And we had good weightlifting coaches there. And what I realized when I sort of got back into the weight room when I got older is I knew how to lift. I knew some general principles. And what I see is a lot of young kids not having that knowledge whatsoever, not knowing what to do. And I think it can be a very intimidating place for people to sort of get into, especially if they're overweight or maybe just out of shape. They feel like they don't know what to do. If you were in their shoes, how would you get into working out?
So step one, I would say to have a plan. Well, first, identify your goals, right? Mm-hmm. You need to have a tangible goal. You can set a long-term goal. You can set a short-term goal. But the first thing I would say is to have a plan, and then find something that you can adhere to, because adherence is key. If you're not able to adhere to your plan, you're never going to get even to your long-term goal. Your short-term goal, rather. With me personally, I started off in the gym just messing around. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it got to the point where I would, develop small injuries here and there. And then I would, investigate on YouTube and learn more and more. I had the privilege of learning from the internet, mm-hmm. Even more so now. These days with social media and all the influencers and stuff, you can learn anything online these days.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to learn good technique online and be able to practice it in real life. But one thing I would say to someone who's younger than me, who's starting to work out, or even older than me and wanting to develop new habits, is just show up.
Yeah, 100%.
Just show up. Once you can identify that you're able to get there and start working out, then think about a plan.
Yeah.
You can research a lot of different plans online, and one that you can stick to is gonna develop the result you want.
Yeah, and another thing I would definitely encourage people is don't be afraid to ask for help. I remember when I was 18 years old, and I had bought in a kettlebell, and I didn't know really how to do a kettlebell swing. And I saw a dude in the gym doing kettlebell swings, jack dude. I went up to him and I said, "Hey, can you show me how to do a kettlebell swing?" And this dude was an asshole. Oh. He was a dick. He was a dick to me. He said, "No, I'm busy right now." He was a dick. And you know what? Luckily, just the way that my mind is, I went, well, I'm not gonna let that throw me off. And I asked literally the next dude I saw doing kettlebell swings. He looked like he was doing them great. Looked like he knew what he was doing. Went up to that guy. "Hey, can you show me how to do a kettlebell swing? I just got a kettlebell." He was the nicest guy ever. So 1 out of 2, right there, like don't give up if you go ask somebody and they're a dick, because most people are going to be super cool. That dude showed me how to do a kettlebell swing. He showed me how to do a kettlebell clean. He showed me how to do kettlebell around the worlds, Turkish get-ups, and it was just the coolest thing ever. I don't know the guy. I don't know who the guy is, but literally he taught me how to start with kettlebells, and I lifted kettlebells for a while. That's like what I was really into. But like the point is, it's like you need to go ask people. Like if somebody saw, I've seen this happen at the gym with you. If somebody saw you squatting, 3-4 plates, whatever, and they came up to you and said, hey, can you help me with my squat form on the bar? You would 100% help them.
Absolutely.
So go up to people and ask them genuinely. And if somebody's a dick to you, brush it off and ask the next person, because you're not going to run into 10 people in a row who are assholes.
Another thing is like be open-minded. That's almost like a superpower if you're young, because most people, when they're really young, they're extremely closed-minded. They see something they want and they're not open to asking for help or looking vulnerable. Maybe it's the influence of social media, because a lot of people see, ripped people online, really muscular people, and they think, I want to look like that. But the reality is, to get there, it's going to take a lot of hard work and consistency. And if you don't have a plan to stick to, you're never going to get to where you want to be. Yeah,
it's true. So I wanted to ask you, so being in the ER and stuff, you probably deal with a lot of people who come in with heart attacks, like basically the end of lifestyle diseases. I mean, heart attacks are one of the biggest killer in the United States. Who are these people that you see coming in? If you were to describe them, like, are they overweight? Are they in shape? Like, just to give a picture of what's actually happening on the ground, what are you seeing out there?
So in the emergency department, it isn't one specific type of person per se. It's everyone, literally everyone. These bad occurrences can happen to anyone. We have these, tragic accidents that happen, but I would say for the most part, the people that are the sickest have these metabolic illnesses or diseases that are metabolic in nature. You talk a lot about insulin resistance and avoiding carbohydrates and sugar. Just implementing that practice alone in your life goes a long way in terms of your longevity. But like we stated earlier, if you're closed-minded or you're younger, you don't really look into those things because they aren't conducive to a nice physique.
Yeah. It's true.
They aren't. But the longer you do this, the more you're in the fitness space, you start to realize that longevity is the key, and that's what we're all basically chasing. So
yeah, 100%. And so day in, day out, you're seeing some gnarly stuff, right. I'd say. How do you balance that mentally? Because there are a lot of people that listen to this podcast that, we have a good amount of people in the military that listen to this podcast. Maybe they want to become a police officer or, an EMT. How do you balance that? Would you recommend it for somebody or, sort of like that? Like, ask my buddy who's a Marine the same thing. Like, what do you think of the mental toll that this job takes?
Well, it definitely has a heavy mental toll. I used to live with a couple buddies in San Francisco, and one of them could tell you there were days where I'd come home from work and he'd be like, hey, man, how was work? And I'd be like, oh, it was all right.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of it.
Yep.
Little did he know, like, I had watched someone, bleed to death, or someone had a brain bleed, or had to manage a really sick ICU patient on multiple vasopressors and drips. And, it's stressful stuff. It's stressful stuff to deal with. And anyone who works ER can tell you it is a shit show. That's why we say welcome to the shit show, because ER is extremely difficult. You have to think on your feet. And especially as a nurse, in the role as a nurse versus a doctor, there are multiple things that you have to juggle at the same time. So let's say, for example, I come on shift, whether it's in the morning or on a night shift, you could be handed off a set of patients that are completely and vastly different from each other. You could have a homeless guy who's psychotic, who's, thinking of hanging himself or overdosing, and he's verbalized these things to you, and he needs to get to a psychiatrist as soon as possible, but he's yelling and screaming in the room, throwing things in the room, acting erratic. Then you have your second patient who could be, an elderly woman who fell down her stairs at 5 a.m. and has internal brain bleeding, and she needs emergent blood pressure management. Your third patient could be, a gunshot victim that's coming in 2 minutes. You have to get into that room with your group, with your team, and be ready for that patient. And you might have a fourth patient who might be here for like a bellyache.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to manage and prioritize who do I see first, and what's my priority.
Yeah.
So it can be a lot.
Time management. You probably have really good like internal time management just like built in.
Yeah, well,
you have to.
Developed over time, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and what I see with you in your life is like, I think a lot of people are looking for like, so many young people, like they want to succeed. They want to have the discipline to be able to do, all this stuff. But what I always tell them is like, it does start with health and with a lot of these practices in the weight room, in the gym, trying different things, because that discipline will reflect over to your work and all that type of stuff. So how have you seen that kind of transfer, being somebody that's just killing it in the weight room and now like you're pretty regimented in your life? Have you seen that transfer over, and does it apply? Like, if you skip out on a bunch of days in the gym, how does that affect you? I mean, if you even do that, like how does one affect the other?
Well, that's a really good question, actually. I will say this. I had a lot of really good influences when I was in nursing school. I was fortunate enough to like start nursing school at a really early age. I started when I was, I think, 21. And there were two individuals in my life at the time who were really disciplined in the gym, big muscular guys in shape and also killing it in the nursing program. Like I'm talking straight A's, my buddy Randy and my buddy Leon. Both of these guys, were a huge example for me. And at the time, being a young kid, I was 21 years old. I looked up to these guys like, wow, like they have the ability to stay in shape and kill it academically. It was just a huge motivator for me. And now that I've been as consistent as I have all these years with the gym, it does translate into other areas of my life because I can see the benefit in terms of delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. When you're really young, you don't really understand the concept of delayed gratification. You don't understand that it takes little steps along the way that are daily steps for a long-term goal. So even with studying through my most difficult and rigorous times in nursing school and even school that I'm in right now, being in the gym has just always been my therapy. Yeah. It's always been something that I look forward to, and I'm thankful for that. There's people out there that can't even fucking walk. Yeah. There's people out there that when they walk, they get out of breath. When they go up a flight of stairs, they get out of breath. Imagine feeling that way. Yeah. Imagine getting up in the morning and not having the energy to do what you want to do. Yeah.
I've seen it, man, over and over again. I like, I'm not old, but like getting into like your 30s, you start to see people around you sort of drop off where they can't like do the basic stuff. And like I did a video a while ago where I was just like kind of playing at a park, like just like barefoot in the grass, just like with my dog, just like doing cartwheels and shit and just like messing around barefoot, playing. And like people lose these skills or they never practice them whatsoever. And then they almost seem astonished and angry when they're like, well, I'm having difficulty just like walking up a flight of stairs now. It's like, when have you ever like challenged your lower body? And now you're expecting, I want to be able to do these activities and you can't. And that's why it's so important to be healthy when you're young and learn how to be healthy. It's okay if you want to fuck off and have some pizza sometimes and drink, whatever. But if you don't know how to do it, and that's what I'm trying to convey to people in my content. It's like, this is how you be healthy. Do what you want now, but this is how to be healthy.
Right. I tell people all the time, especially like my closest friends in life, I always explain to them like, look, I have a 75-25 rule. And even the people at my work, they'll joke with me. Like this one guy that I work with made a joke one time and he was like, oh, 9 a.m., Carlos, time for your egg whites. I just thought that was hilarious. But my 75-25 rule is this. I will eat to sustain 75% of the time. So I'll focus on protein, fat, and fiber. Yep. Eat as much of that as you want to satiety. Mm-hmm. The other 25, it'll be beer, cookies, donuts, whatever the hell I want to eat, I'm going to eat it. I was at a wedding yesterday. I had like 6 cupcakes, ton of beer. My cousin got married. I went all out. Like, you think I gave a shit today about what I ate, 2 days ago? No, because I have healthy habits, healthy practices.
100%, dude. My buddy, Alan Sanchez, he's a black belt at 10 Planet San Mateo, and he was like, dude, I watched your like video on like Gatorade and like this. And I was like, Alan, you train jiu-jitsu 90 minutes a day, three times a day, 90-minute sessions.
Insane sparring.
I was like, you're a different person than who I'm making these videos for. Your body literally will chew through stuff if you're an elite athlete. You train like an elite athlete. And it's so funny. What I think happens with so many people is they think they deserve cheat meal or to eat, cupcakes and beer. And it's like, dude, you haven't done anything. Like, you're literally, like, you're not lifting weights for a lot of people. So, like, your body isn't going to manage that sugar in the same way. Like, you're not going to burn through it the next day. You're just going to store it as adipose tissue. That's where most people are at. And one of the really cool things about working out and lifting weights and training hard is it gives your body more leeway.
It does.
Makes life fun. You can have cupcakes and be jacked. You can do it. Obviously, I'm not going to make a video in the grocery store condoning cupcakes. But you can do it if you're, sadly, it's a 1% individual. That's where we're at.
It's funny because I had this one guy at the gym that I used to see off and on tell me like, oh, well, if I had your genetics, then this. And it's just like, well,
the genetics excuse.
If we're speaking genetics, like the majority of the people in my family are overweight. Mm-hmm. It's not about genetics, it's about daily habits. Like, life is literally about decisions.
100%.
If you decide to live a certain way, you're going to live the consequence of those habits.
Yeah, no, it's very true. The genetics thing is one of the biggest excuses and cop-outs that I see on my page whenever I talk about a certain lifestyle disease or metabolic disease. People say, well, my whole family was obese. And it's like, well, it's epigenetics. The reason your family was obese is look at what they ate and look at the choices they made. And like, it's, their culture to maybe sit in front of the TV, drink soda, eat. And if you were like, being like, oh, I'm going to go hit a 3-hour long workout right now. They'd be like, that's weird. Like, don't do that. Like, hang out with us.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people just think that it's some genetic thing when with a lot of these lifestyle diseases, it's not.
It's not. And another thing is like, you don't have to be in the gym for 3 hours.
No.
Obviously, I've done that because I like to shoot the shit with people and talk to people at the gym sometimes. Everyone who goes to the gym is a victim of that. Sometimes you just end up talking to people.
It's a fun place.
It is a fun place. But you don't need more than an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe even less.
Yeah, to get started, like, you could literally work out for like, I'm putting air quotes because you could, just starting out, you could just swing a kettlebell for 10 minutes and go on a 10-minute walk. And if you start doing that, you are going to burn enough calories to like start to get your body used to that calorie deficit, and you're going to start dropping weight.
Right.
And then you're going to the gym and hitting an hour-long workout is going to feel good.
Right.
It's like you could start with so little. And everybody that lifts weights and knows fitness knows this because like if right now I'm trying to do like a mini cut, I'm going to Costa Rica, I want to lean out a little bit. So I'm just like, I'm just going to walk my dog for 10 minutes longer. It's not hard.
Right.
It really isn't hard, and I've just created a calorie deficit from that. It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, getting steps in is really underrated. I just saw my cousin for the first time in a few months at this wedding that I was at, and he had lost a ton of weight.
Yeah.
And I was like, how'd you do it? And he's like, oh, I just started walking to work.
Yep.
So,
dude, I saw that. So the best example ever, it was this guy talking, and he was like, a lot of people just get confused on why they're gaining weight. So, and they don't look at the basic movement that they were doing. So like they'll maybe like 20, 21 years old, maybe they're not in college, and they have been gaining weight. But what you're not noticing is you were just in high school, you put on a backpack, you maybe walked to the bus, and then you walked around school, and then you got home, and then maybe you walked around, met your friends, biked to go meet your friends. They might not have ever worked out. They might not be a gym person whatsoever, but you were just burning, 500, 600, 700 calories. You kept everything the same, and people will say this. I kept everything the same. I don't know why I was, gaining weight. It's like you stopped that activity right there, and you just created a 700 calorie surplus because you just didn't go to school with a backpack on. And now you're wondering why you're getting weight. It's like, just put a backpack on and go walk anyway.
Yeah, you actually see that a lot with elite high school athletes that, for whatever reason, stop playing their sport, and then they gain a ton of weight, and they wonder why. It's because that output of energy, that energy expenditure that you had on a constant basis is now gone.
Yeah.
So people who were either former athletes, or even if you're new to the gym, you need to find a stimulus that you can stick with. Because if you have a certain lifestyle and then for whatever reason you stop that energy expenditure and you maintain the same shit diet you may have had, you're going to gain weight.
100%. It's crazy. And speaking of sports, so you just started jiu-jitsu not too long ago.
I suck at it.
Hey, I suck at it too. I think everybody kind of sucks at jiu-jitsu. Like, at the end of the day, maybe not Mason Fowler. That's kind of the only guy I can think who doesn't suck at jiu-jitsu. But like, how did you get into it, first of all? Because that's the big thing I hear on my page. People are like, how do I even get into jiu-jitsu? What's it like? What was that like?
Well, I would say for me, like after being in the gym for 10 years, I'll always love to lift weights. I'll always love being in the gym, but I think I just came to a point where I needed a new physical pursuit. And like I said, I suck at jiu-jitsu. Shout out to my boy Santiago, who got me into jiu-jitsu. He's a brown belt. But it's so funny because I was at work with him. He grabs my bicep and he goes, "This is all show muscle, not go muscle. I'll choke the shit out of you." And I was like, oh shit, he's right.
Yeah.
You know, my 400-pound squat doesn't mean shit in a physical altercation.
Yeah.
And
it means a little bit, but to a brown belt like your buddy,
yeah,
it's not going to mean much.
But yeah, it's like I really enjoy the novelty of it, and I'm excited to progress, even though it's really, really difficult. And I've accepted that it's going to be difficult for a long time, and it's not that difficult to show up.
Yeah.
It's down the street for me. It's 2 to 3 days a week. It's a new skill, and I'm excited to learn it. I'm also excited to learn as I age, because you may not be strong forever, but if I can age with the skill of jiu-jitsu, that'll be a massively valuable skill for me.
Yeah, and jiu-jitsu is a martial art where you can do it into old age. Now, I'm not saying, you can train extremely hard into old age, be like a really wrestling-focused jiu-jitsu style, competing at like ADCC, like that level of jiu-jitsu. But there's people like Jeff Glover is a famous black belt out of SoCal, who's like, he's getting up there in age. I don't think he's crazy old right now, but his style of jiu-jitsu, like he has, crazy technique, a lot of fun with it. And I know that dude's going to be rolling into old age just having like a lot of fun. And it is a martial art that you can do into old age. You can't wrestle probably into old age. It's not a lot of people that do it. You can't do boxing really into old age. And when you progress in those martial arts, like kickboxing, boxing, all that type of stuff, any form of Thai striking, you take head trauma. Right. To get good at the sport, you take head trauma. And so a lot of people ask me, boxing or jiu-jitsu? It's like, boxing's an extremely valid martial art. It's great, if you want to go hit the bag, and even maybe if you're young, move around with your friends, spar a little bit, cool. But at some point, when you want to take that martial art to the next level, it involves sparring. And I spar all the time in jiu-jitsu. Worst thing happens, I hurt my finger a little bit, my neck's sore. I'm not getting concussed every time I go to jiu-jitsu, so that's huge.
Yeah, I actually was influenced with jiu-jitsu by Nsima Inyang. He's on Mark Bell's Power Project. That guy's an absolute beast. Like, I learned a lot from him and that whole podcast in general, but I'm really starting to see the value in jiu-jitsu because, like you said, it's relatively safe martial art. It's very useful. And you can go in and spar and get an insane workout insane cardio session without the impact to your skull. Yeah. With boxing and even Muay Thai, all that striking, it's going to take a toll on your brain and or other parts of your body. 100%.
Yeah, it's just like to progress it, you kind of have to take shots to the head, which isn't the best idea. I don't want you.
I'm not trying to take shots to the head.
No. Yeah, it's just it's not good for you in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, jiu-jitsu really is like the best martial art, and the community with it, and just like going to class.
That's another thing. Yeah.
And what I tell a lot of people is the human touch. Yeah, I'm trying to strangle my friends, but like human touch is key. Like if most people, like, they're not even like interacting physically with any people during the day.
That's pretty. Actually, I never thought of it that way. That's also very crucial too.
It is.
Because the gym is very isolating.
Yeah.
You just put your headphones on, you go. I mean, that's how I am. I put my headphones on, I go lift. I'll talk here and there, but the community within jiu-jitsu is way, way better than the community within weightlifting.
There's no phones on the mat. There's no headphones. Nobody has music in, and you're touching other people. And while that sounds like you're trying to armbar them and stuff, but like there is something to that is so key for people. And for many people, it's the only time in their day where they touch another human being.
Right.
And that's why I think like it's just a key thing for people to get into with how isolated we are nowadays, especially with the ramifications from COVID. People are just way more like isolated and like they don't get close to people. And I always wonder how that's affected our society and our brain development, all that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of COVID, like I was at the front lines of that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't basically be around my family for a long time. Months.
Yeah, 100%.
I was FaceTiming my brother and I had to call my mom, but I actually couldn't go see them physically. And that was a really scary time for me. Anyone who works ER, first responders, they will all agree to this. It was a time of uncertainty, and it was a time where we didn't know what was going to happen next. We saw people getting sick. We saw people dying. I can't even begin to tell you how many people that we were wheeling to the ICU and people that would come in, coughing in our faces.
Yeah.
Fevers, young people short of breath. We were like, this is fucking serious. We don't know what the fuck's going to happen, So It was a scary time.
That must have been insane.
Yeah,
I can't like being on the front because like there was like in the beginning of it like we didn't know. And I remember just like I would just be on like Instagram or something. You'd see like some like young like athlete die, and then you get like freaked out for a few weeks, and then you're like read something that like it's not that bad, and then you're like the opposite of freaked out. You're like, well, this is bullshit. Like what's going on? And then you see like like this UFC fighter got COVID and was like extremely messed up. And you're like, well, I'm not healthier than that dude. Like like and you get scared. It was crazy.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of young individuals that were relatively healthy with, they'd come in with fevers and shortness of breath, or maybe even asymptomatic, meaning no symptoms of COVID whatsoever, yet we check their oxygen level and it's like way below normal.
It's scary.
And we'd be like, what is happening?
Yeah. It made me double down on my health. Like I was just like in the sauna, like upping my cardio, like, just making sure I was like dialed in. And I think it did that for a lot of people. I mean, we saw like this health boom from COVID, which sort of is, kind of like phased off, which, we see it every year, like New Year's, like the gym is packed. And then people just like, they
fade
just
away.
give up. Yeah. And they
fade away.
It's disappointing, but yeah, it is what it is. What I wanted to get into next is sort of some stuff with health. You're a huge fan of salt-based electrolytes. We just came out with one. I got to get you one before you leave. But what have you noticed? Everyone comes in and they say to their doctor, or the doctor says to them, salt is bad. Mm-hmm. Don't drink salt. Salt is bad. But you're over here drinking salt-based electrolytes before your workouts.
Yeah.
Why? What do you feel with that?
Well, first off, salt is bad for people with kidney function issues and high blood pressure.
Yes.
But you need to think about the diet and lifestyle factors that contributed to the development of those conditions. Mm-hmm. If you're a young, healthy, active individual, you need sodium in your diet.
Yep.
You need sodium in your water. You need hydration. It's crucial. It fuels muscle contraction and your energy levels, especially if you're relatively keto or you're trying to avoid, sugar and carbohydrates. Salt intake is huge. It's gonna curb your cravings. It's gonna make you feel better. I feel so energized when I wake up in the morning and I have like an electrolyte supplement.
Same here.
Or even when I'm working out in the gym lifting, or if I'm doing jujitsu, I notice a difference. I tell kids all the time, I don't even take creatine. I'll have a protein shake here and there, but literally the only supplement after 10 years of being in the gym that I firmly believe in is electrolytes, sugar-free electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium.
Yep.
I don't feel that it's unsafe. I feel that it's drastically improved my life and the way I feel on a day-to-day basis.
100% agree. I mean, I started out just putting, Redmond salt in my water, and I was like, well, I feel amazing on this stuff.
Right.
Just like going on a mountain bike ride or whatever I'm doing, like I feel amazing. And then I started looking into some of the studies on it, and there's a lot of studies on PubMed done with athletes. So they'll take a group of cyclists and they'll be like, we gave them, 1,000 milligrams sodium and their performance drastically increased. So just like you're saying, it's like, yeah, if you have hypertension, if you aren't healthy, if you are morbidly obese, you might want to avoid the sodium.
Then avoid the sodium.
If you are an athlete, get a salt-based electrolyte, take some before your next workout. And the bodybuilding community is really coming around to this, like in big support, where they're like, salt gives you an excellent pump in the gym. Like you just feel good. Your muscles don't cramp up.
That's right.
Your actual like contraction of your muscles, like you're saying, just better. Your brain health, it just seems like way more dialed in. I mean, electrolytes, our bodies have this like electrical system basically.
Right.
And it relies on magnesium, potassium, sodium, all these electrolytes to function. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of them. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like with sodium, potassium, magnesium, I actually got into electrolyte supplements initially because I had implemented intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. Like I was practicing that for like a year and a half when I was first trying to, improve my body composition, get leaner, feel stronger, just overall get in better shape. I noticed that when I was avoiding carbs, I was, you avoid carbs, you're going to start peeing a lot.
Yeah.
Your insulin's going to be low. Your kidneys are excreting all those electrolytes in your body. Like you need these electrolytes
100%.
if you're low carb. But with time through intermittent fasting, I literally use that as a tool to just improve my diet. Mm-hmm. Because before I would crave, I have a sweet tooth, so I'll crave a lot of pastries and cakes and cookies and stuff like that. But the second I went low carb or like a keto approach, and I started consuming electrolytes, it curbed that craving completely.
Yeah.
And I started feeling better. And then after about a month or so, I wasn't even craving these things anymore.
Yep.
So I can have them now every now and then and It's fine.
There's a whole like science on what causes sugar cravings that they're looking into. Is it gut bacteria? Is it like like there's studies that glutamine water and electrolytes help stave off sugar cravings. Like that's all fascinating to me because when I first cut out sugar, almost over a decade ago, the cravings you get in the first 2 weeks
insane.
for sure
They're
are
insane.
insane because your gut bacteria controls a lot of your neurotransmitters. It literally is controlling how you think and what you feel, and it will convince you
And
that
you're thinking
sugar's
about
fine.
cupcakes.
Exactly, 100%. It's going to convince you to go get some cupcakes no matter what. So, last question I wanted to ask you is, are there any particular crazy stories that you have from the last couple of years of being in the ER? I'm just fascinated by it. Like, I just love like talking to people that have like these gnarly professions. Like our buddy who's a maverick surfer. I'm like, like describe the gnarliest wave. So like, what is your gnarliest wave of the ER?
All right, so I get asked that a lot, and normally I don't really go into it because people don't actually want to hear it. I feel like the people closest in my life do. So I will say the gunshot wounds, for the most part, stick with you. There's a lot of moments where patients come in or we get what's called a ring down, where the ambulances will call when they're, say, 5-10 minutes out, and they'll give us basic details that we need to know, like crucial information about the patient that we need to know, like the mechanism of injury, the patient's blood pressure, if they even have one, their level of consciousness, and their age and their sex. So there's been many instances, but mainly with night shift is where we see the most penetrating thoracic injuries. There was one specific scenario where I was on night shift. It was during COVID, and it was a middle-aged female who had, I think, 3 gunshot wounds to the chest with exit wounds. And she came in and she was awake and she was panicking. And she was screaming and panicking and thrashing around so much that we couldn't get her to stay still. And we had to basically tie her down in order to do the interventions that were necessary to save her life. And this was during the pandemic. So I was fully, covered with gown, goggles, gloves, the whole nine. So this lady could have had COVID in addition to the fact that she was bleeding out. So I'm trying to get an IV, and she was pretty heavy set, and she's, panting, she's breathing, she's panicking, she's screaming. We have the doc in there, the trauma surgeon's in there, and, he's screaming at us.
Yeah.
It's a stressful situation, but anyone in the ER can tell you we all have a role. It's a team effort, and I think that's one of the good parts about it. But basically what happened was she was thrashing around. She was losing a lot of blood, bleeding internally. And all she could see from her point of view was this, my eyes.
Yeah.
Because I had a gown and everything on, all my personal protective equipment. But I basically grabbed her arm and I was cleaning it off, pulled a huge IV out because, someone who's bleeding out, they need large bore IV access for fluid resuscitation and blood. So she looks at me, she's panting, she's breathing, and she can barely even make words. And she would not keep her arm still because she's dying.
Yeah.
You can't tell someone like that to follow directions.
No, she's in full fight or flight.
Yeah, she's in full fight or flight. She's screaming. We can't get her to stay still. There came a point where I just grabbed her arm. I looked at her and I was like, do you want to live? Keep this fucking arm still.
Damn.
And, any ER nurse can tell you that. We've all done it.
Yeah.
We've all told the patient to do what they need to do so that we can do what we need to do. So luckily I got a large IV in her arm, and we got a unit of blood spiked, and we rapidly just infused a ton of blood into her. And she ended up going into emergent surgery, but that specific situation was just so profound to me because I was like down on one knee, eye to eye with this woman while she's bleeding out. And I remember she was like spitting out blood as she was saying, please.
Damn. That's gnarly.
And with every please that she was saying, blood was like coming out of her mouth. And I was like doing a windshield wipe over my eye protection.
Yeah.
Can't think of the word right now. I'm blanking. But I was like wiping the blood off of my eye protection, trying to get an IV in this lady.
And she's literally like holes in her from gunshot wounds.
Right.
Yeah.
And, thank God we were able to do what we need to do and give her emergent blood. And she had to go to emergent surgery. And I don't know what happened to her. I hope she survived. But that moment specifically really stuck with me because I was down on one knee and all this woman saw was my eyes.
Yeah.
She doesn't know who I am, but she's staring at a room full of people while she's bleeding out and she can barely breathe, wondering if she's going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I went home that night. I didn't tell anyone about it, but that situation really stuck with me because I tried to put myself in her shoes and just think to myself how grateful we are to be healthy.
Yeah.
Because some of the worst shit happens to the nicest people, and we see it on a daily basis in the ER.
Damn. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I literally think of, all nurses and medical workers, but like especially the people in the ER, like you guys are angels to a lot of people. Man. You are. Like it's insane. And like it's one of the things our medical system does the best. People always ask me, like they'll write these comments on my Instagram, like the medical system is evil. They're trying to kill us. And I don't really agree with that at all. Mm-hmm. I don't. These are really intelligent people working hard, trying to get a fix.
Right. I
think what we do best is trauma care with what you're in. And what do you think about the trauma care that you guys do, and we do pretty well in the United States, versus somebody who's pretty healthy, maybe they're just like 10 pounds overweight, not feeling great, and they go to the doctor? What are some of the differences you see there, like in terms of the American medical system?
I will say, first off, there's a lot of problems within the American medical system, and we don't have to get into that, but what the American medical system does well is, specific interventions to save people's lives. Also in different specialties of medicine, we're really good at intervening to save people's lives, essentially, especially in trauma care. But I think for people that just want to be healthier, that concept doesn't really apply because it takes a lot more consistency. Mm-hmm. And it's all on the patient at that point.
100%, yeah.
If you're a patient and you're dying, your care is on us.
Yeah.
Because you have no control at that point. But you do have control with yourself and your own practices and your own body and preventing long-term illness. So I guess if I had to differentiate the two, they're vastly different. On one end of the spectrum, you have, you're basically almost at the end of the line. You're dying. You need immediate intervention. You're in the ER. You're no longer in control. Mm-hmm. But the other end of the spectrum is, this is your day-to-day practice. This is your life. Are you implementing certain habits that contribute to your well-being?
Yeah.
So if you are self-reliant and you have good habits, then you can keep yourself on the healthy end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And not end up towards the end or the latter, which is extremely unhealthy and needing help. 100%.
I think that's a great place to end it. Guys, if you don't want to end up extremely fucked up, getting a heart attack, breaking leg because you fall down the stairs because you don't have the leg strength to walk up or down stairs, do the habits now. Go to the weight room. Start running. Start walking. Start eating healthy. That is going to literally save your life sometime down the line. You might not know it yet, but you're going to be 80 years old thanking yourself that you did the habits now. So, man, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing those stories too. I know they're tough, but I wanted to dig a little bit.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Stoked. As always, Santa Cruz Paleo on Amazon, Santa Cruz Medicinals. Try out one of our formulas if you like this podcast, and I'll check in with you guys next week. Peace.